All right, we are digging back into financial intimacy again.
Mhm.
This time, we're going to be talking about why communication in the context of financial intimacy is so important. So if you want to know how to not only make your money close, but how to talk about it, stay tuned. Hey, Safehouse.
What's up, Safehouse? In a good mood.
She's in a good mood. You have a lovely hairstyle.
Yes, I'm not looking like Polly Purebred today. You know, Polly Purebred's
Right.
bang was much bigger than mine.
Right. Now you got your Jessica Rabbit going
Right,
on. Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
It's only going to be like the old school folks who know who Polly Purebred was.
Right. Dudley Do Right for those in Polly Purebred. There you go.
Right.
No, Polly Purebred was Underdog.
Underdog,
Right? Underdog. I
right,
got it
right,
wrong.
right.
Yeah. So
Come on, man.
old school cartoons,
Yes.
you all.
Oh, that's how we used to spend, like when we first got married.
Oh, yeah.
That's how we would spend our Saturday mornings, just watching old school cartoons.
Watching old cartoons and
Yeah.
eating bowls of cereal.
Oh my God, I think a bowl of cereal might tear me up now. I'm like,
Yeah, you know, you get to this age and
You can't
just
do that no
milk,
more.
you know, the concept of milk just
Right.
takes
Yeah.
another level of dealing.
And when we first got married, that's probably all we could afford.
Yeah.
It's like, that's why that was like, we got some cereal and some milk.
You look back and dry goods is a blessing when
exactly.
you first get married. You know, ramen, cereal,
Yeah.
just any sort of dry goods. You know, it
Exactly.
makes the budget go a long way.
Yeah, so that like takes us right into financial intimacy.
Financial intimacy. Remember,
Yes.
you all like the video, share the video, subscribe to the channel, ring the bell for notifications so you'll know when we publish new and updated content. So now let's get into this topic. Let's continue financial intimacy. We got a lot of great feedback from the last episode. It was overwhelming.
I felt like one of the biggest things that people were talking about with the emotional transparency was their money story.
Yeah.
Because it really brought home to them like their idea and their thoughts around money.
Yeah.
And so we got a lot of comments about just that part about thinking about their money story
money
and the
story.
perspective
Yeah, the
that
money.
it gave them on how they see their money.
Yeah. It gives you what built it up, right?
Yeah,
you know, to
absolutely.
that point I said, instead of what's wrong with you, what happened to you.
Mhm.
Usually your money story is a reflection of what happened to you throughout your life and how you came to have this relationship with money.
Yeah.
And then that drives your sort of money mindset, which was that other component that we asked about it. So it was very, very good.
It was really good.
So we're going to dig deeper into this. Now we're talking about money talks, communication and financial. So this is literally money talks.
And I think sometimes that's still like really hard for couples. Like even once they know their money story, things like that, for some reason there's still, you know, like when we get ready to talk about money, there's still this shroud of secrecy that we still want to put over it. Like, because we still have it, you know, like the Bible says that the goal is for us to become one. It's so hard for us, like in the beginning. And I think sometimes even like even when we've been married for a while, to be able to be honest about our finances. And so in this conversation, we just want to give you some thoughts on why it's so critical and why you have to be able to be honest about it.
And for the singles that are looking for your forever person, this is the cheat code.
Yeah.
These are the conversations you have when you're out to dinner on a date or when you're sitting and having conversation about the future. These are the types of things that you can start to tee up now to give you ideas about how open can we be about our money, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Can we be transparent about a few things now that'll lead to more transparency as we go along in the relationship?
Yeah. Because I felt like, well, I don't think even when we started dating, we never really talked about like how much money I had and how much money you had. We never talked about that.
Right. I didn't talk about it because I had none. Right. It's like, if I'd have talked about it, it would have been zero, right? It'd have been very little to talk. It'd have been a short conversation. That's what it would have been, right? Because I didn't have much, and you know, my job at the time. I remember you looked at my insurance card, and you're like, "What is this? You know, is this? How do you go to the doctor with this?" Right? You know, our job was very Spartan in terms of benefits.
They were, they were.
They improved over time. You
Because
know,
I think you got on my insurance.
Yeah, I got on your
'cause I
insurance,
had
right?
good
Because mine was kind of confusing on how to use it, right? It's like you had to call a number and do some other, and the card was weird, and it was just I don't know.
But even in that, what's so important is that we still had to talk.
Yeah,
we had to come to the table and talk about that.
Yeah, I think we were kind of forced into certain levels of transparency, right? So it's
that is true.
So it's like, okay, we're going to buy some property, right? And when you're saving up to buy that first house, now we had a little buffer, right? Because we got married in 94. We didn't buy our first house in 97, right?
It was 98. It was
97,
a year after AJ was born.
like 98, right? So we had like a 4-year buffer, right? I moved into your apartment, right? So we didn't have to go through sort of background and credit check and everything. And then when we moved into Alsep, there wasn't a whole lot of...
There wasn't.
I don't know back in the 90s if they wasn't on that kind of stuff.
They just wanted to know if we had a security deposit.
Yeah, we had enough money, which we did. And then, but then when you start to make that move to get a house, then all of the stuff comes out, right? You know, all of my debts that, you know, the judgments, the stuff I paid, the stuff I didn't pay, the bad checks I'd written. I mean, just everything just kind of comes out, right? And what's funny is, though, you had no bad situations. You just had
I just had a lot. You know, I was paying on my stuff. It was just a lot.
Now, if she'd have kept paying at the pace that she was paying, she'd probably be, you know, our grandkids would still be paying that debt.
That is true.
You know,
that is
but
true.
so we had different sort of perceptions of, or at least different situations going on. What I find, and it still, you know, sort of bothers me today, is when you're transparent about your finances, you're afraid it'll reveal how badly you've handled them.
Yeah, that's true.
Right?
Oh, that's really good. Yeah, there's a fear around that.
You have fear that someone's going to judge you about how you've handled them. It's like, I know I'm always reluctant, even with financial advisors and folks that handle your investments. You know, it's just like, I don't want anybody looking at me and tell me I didn't do right, or I didn't do what I was supposed to do, and all this kind of stuff.
But then you always say to me, I think, like I said, the longer that we've been married, because we didn't, you know, because it was that fear, like early on in our marriage, you know, we didn't want to talk to financial advisors, we want to talk to investors. But the older that we've gotten, I always think about the advice you give about golf.
Yeah.
And how if I'm going to a golf instructor, you know, this is not the moment to hide all of my flaws.
Right.
You know, this is the moment for him to see all of my flaws so that he can help me fix them. Instead of, you know, because that's what we try to do. We try to bring our best game. And it's like, well, then you don't need a golf instructor. You know, you don't need anybody to help you with your finances. You don't need a person to help you, you know, repair your credit, you know, or anything like that, because none of us are perfect. You know, and so we got to be able to get over the stigma of, oh, wow, you know, I messed it up. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, I messed it up. But like, how can we fix it?
Yeah, it's pride. That's how pride is sinful. Because I love the way you sort of took me back to that. Because why would you go to someone to show them how good you are? And I know deep down inside, you want to go to a financial advisor and you want to get affirmation. Hey, your finances look great. You've done such a good job. There's very little I have to do here. Right. So let's just take some money and make you richer. Right.
That was not our story.
That's not our story. Right.
Definitely not our story.
You know, it was just like, all right, here are these crumbs that we got, and we didn't save nothing. We got all this stuff over here. You know, it's like, okay, well, let's build up something from there. You know, let's start cutting a budget. And you've always been very good at budgeting, right? So that's always played in our favor.
And most couples don't like the B word.
You know, I remember one couple we were with, and she says budgeting is just depressing. It's just depressing. It's and just looking at numbers and having to stay in a box is just kind of depressing. And that's another unfortunate thing, because you just don't know how empowering it is. Every time I think about, you know, depressing things with budgets, because I don't like budgets either, right?
Right.
But I look at somebody like my uncle, and you see the dividends that budgeting pays.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Right,
Yeah.
right. You know, so my Uncle Charlie he's a budget fiend, right? I mean, you know, he used to, when he'd take trips up here in his car, he would sit down afterwards and do calculations on like what kind of gas mileage he got, because the computers weren't built into the cars then. It was just how much you put in the pump and then how many miles you drove.
Yeah.
And he would always calculate that out so that he can get the best gas mileage, you know. But now you look at him in his state, you know, he is able, you know, once again, him and his wife, they travel the world. He's able to do for his grandkids. He's a family problem solver. You know, when there's $1,000 problems going on, he shows up and solves them, right? He makes the problem go away, right? And it's not a situation where it's challenging his finances to do that, right? That's the benefit, the later benefit, or delaying that, you know, sort of satisfaction of that gratification till later. You budget now in order to have that power to be able to do those types of things later.
But I think that's, you know, that's one of the tools of being able to share vision and goals.
Yeah.
You know, because like you said, if we have goals, not just for today, but for the future, the budget speaks for itself, because the budget is kind of like what you said last week about money is just numbers. I mean, it's just resources.
It's math. Money is math.
Yeah, that's what you said. Money is math.
Yeah.
And once you put everything on paper, it's still math.
Yeah.
And so you get to see how much money, I don't know, at first I felt like our budget was showing us how much money we didn't have.
Right.
But you also need to see that part too. You know, like, okay, well, man, you know what? We eat out like 4 days a week. And so, man, maybe if we cut down to 2, now we can put some more money in the budget or whatever. But to me, having that conversation about shared vision and goals really does help. And especially, I think it's a good cheat code for the singles, like I said, when you're dating, because talking about shared vision and goals. See, we can sit and talk about this stuff now. We didn't talk about this then.
We did not.
Oh my God. We didn't have any of these conversations.
We had some individual visions and goals that did not quite coalesce. Right.
So one of my individual goals, which I clearly did not tell my husband, even when we were dating, was I wanted to be a stay-at-home mom.
Right.
Okay. And so like I said, we got married in 94. And so we had our first child in 97. And so by the time we had our second child was 2002. Yeah. And of course, you know, so while I'm pregnant, I tell Andre, I'm like, hey, I'm not going back to work. I want to be a stay-at-home mom.
Right. And I'm like the cartoon, my eyes are wooga, you know, it's like,
he's like, well, where did that come from?
Where did that come from? What are we going to do here?
Right. So I'm like, I've always wanted to do it. And he's like, well, why am I basically just hearing about this?
Yeah. Well, and not only that, I mean, you know, thinking sort of carnally, right, and just sort of mathematically,
right?
You made a pretty big chunk of change back then.
I made like $50,000 at that time.
$50,000 in 2002 was a significant amount.
It was a big amount of money.
And because you were office manager, you've been at your company a long time. You
been there for
also,
like 13 years.
Yeah, and you also had pretty big bonus checks, right? You know, and I think I had not crossed over into the world of six figures yet, right? So
no, you hadn't.
So your salary was going to take away more than sort of, 50% of our total.
That is, I mean, oh God,
yeah. It was going to cut it down quite a bit.
I mean, it was a lot it was a lot on the line.
Yeah.
Like you said, when we talked, that we didn't talk about, because like I said, we had just bought a new house, which pretty much doubled our mortgage.
Yeah.
Like I said, we're getting ready to add another baby to this, once again, you got to buy milk, you got to buy Pampers. We wasn't getting nothing free,
right?
So that's all these different expenses. And here I am saying, hey, I'm going to stay at home.
Yeah.
So it was very challenging.
It was. I mean,
very challenging
because, having a conversation about those kinds of things, it's like, okay, okay, are we just going to sacrifice for a while? Are we going to be able to save for retirement while we're doing this, right? Because once again, when you're young, this is another cheat code. When you're young, that is the most valuable money that you can tuck away for retirement because it will be in there the longest, right? So when you're in your 20s and 30s, putting money into whether it's an investment account or 401k or IRA or any kind of thing, that money has the chance to make the most. And so, you decide, okay, well, we're going to be, stay-at-home parent or whatever have you. That income goes away. That cuts down on how much disposable income you can set aside and save, right? Now, because everything's going into the inflows and outflows of the household, as well as the incidentals of having a child, right? Which there are many.
Yes. Oh, there are definitely many. Yeah. So my cheat code for, like I said, for the singles is have that conversation, about, okay, what do you want to do? Like I said, some women do want to be, stay at home. And so when you're having that conversation, I mean, especially in this day and age with the economy was different in 2002. We're talking about economy in 2025. I mean, and you have to be able to have this realistic conversation about whether or not that's a reality for you two as a couple. To say, okay, it's okay for you to stay home. I always use Hannah as an example, our daughter, because she's always like, well, she's 23 and she already tired of work.
Right.
I'm like, okay, well, you got one or two choices. You have to keep working, save your money, so this way you can build yourself up a nice little nest, or you're going to have to find you somebody that's rich.
Right.
I said, you're going to have to go out while you busy nursing, you're going to have to find you a doctor.
A surgeon or somebody. Right.
I said, and he going to be having to make it nice money, so you can say to him, well, honey, I don't want to go to work every day. Right. Maybe I just want to work every now and then or whatever. But you have to be able to communicate that to your forever person. Before, to me, I think it's better, especially if you've been thinking about it. It's better to communicate that before, so that way it's not sprung on them.
Yeah, and be honest too. I know our baby girl is accustomed to a certain lifestyle.
She is.
Right?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And she's not a big spender. She's not lavish or anything like that, but she likes to be able to have access to the things she has access to. And her path was kind of different, right? So she came right out of a college to a very high earning job, right? So she doesn't know what it's like to work at a minimum wage job, right?
Yeah.
And so, whoever she meets, I'm not saying that she's got to meet a rich guy, but it's like, okay, whatever lifestyle they decide to build together, she has to be clear that, I'm accustomed to a certain standard of living, right?
Oh, yeah.
And therefore, I've invested in my education such that I can maintain that. Whoever she wants to be with can't be a drag on that, right?
Right.
At least meet her where she is,
And the only way she's going to know that he won't be a drag on that is if she's having those conversations up front. And sometimes even those are good conversations to have even in premarital counseling. Because to me, premarital counseling really is the place where you can really kind of decide if you're made for each other. It's okay if you go through premarital counseling and you're like,
call it off.
And we're like, you know what? We're really not made for each other.
We're not made for
this
each other.
isn't going to work. You want to do one thing, I want to do something else, especially when it comes to money.
You said a whole word there, right? Because unfortunately, we have been conditioned to treat premarital counseling like renting the facility for the wedding, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So we rent the facility, we get a DJ, we get premarital counseling. It's a rubber stamp, right? When really that should be the spiritual proving ground for what we are about to do, right?
Absolutely.
That's sort of the last test of, are we both, mentally, physically, spiritually compatible with each other before we go on this venture. And the whole goal is, it's kind of like quality control. This is where we find the defects so we know not to roll forward versus this is just a checkbox before the wedding.
I like what you said, the quality control.
Yeah.
Because all of that's going to show up in your marriage anyway.
It's going to show up.
It's going to show up.
Yeah.
And so I would much rather, like you said, if we know that there's like this roadblock that we just can't get past, like you said, it's okay to say, well, you know what, this just isn't going to work.
So to wrap just that component of it up, just discuss shared vision and goals. And even if you're married right now, it's not too late to sit down and say, you know what, I don't know if we've ever talked about that. And we're just kind of bumping around and doing our own thing. We kind of make it. Do we have a vision for our relationship financially, right? It doesn't, there's a greater vision. Obviously, we believe every marriage is built for a purpose, right?
Yes.
But there's also a purpose around how we're going to manage these finances. I know the stage we're in right now is everything is about retirement and clearing, our debts, our
Yes.
kids' debts, right?
Right,
So we got
right.
one that's debt free, in
The
school.
goal is to get the other one
debt free,
Right.
right? And so beyond that one, the rest is what's life going to be like when neither of us can work, right? So those are kind of the three main priorities, in terms of our finances.
And I like that you're saying that, because the financial intimacy and the conversation piece evolves.
Yeah.
Because where we were 31 years ago, we're not there anymore.
We're not.
So our conversations have been different throughout the years over what our goals were, what do we want to do. Let's be accountable, because that's another big thing.
Yeah.
Let's be accountable to each other about how we're spending our money. And I think the thing that I want to share about the accountability was, we've probably failed like so many different times, like being accountable to each other.
Yeah.
So I'm saying that to say that it's not an easy road. When you're trying to turn over a new leaf, especially when it comes to your finances, it's not that easy to change your behavior.
It's not.
But I felt like, so we've probably paid off our debt like maybe 4 or 5 times.
Probably more than that.
Right. And so every time we paid off our debt, we were like, okay, we're not going to use our credit cards. We're just going to use cash, and we're only going to use it for necessities.
Then we run it up again.
Right.
And so
then we got to come back to the table and have these conversations, tears. And I'm like, oh my God, he's going to divorce me.
No.
Because I felt like it was more me, So I was like, oh, great, I failed again.
No, and then when you come to be like, no, I got some stuff too. Let's just.
But I always seem to have more. I don't know.
Let's just slow it down and pay it off.
Right.
And so I think part of the reality is, I don't think we're ever going to stop using credit. As a matter of fact, with this cashless society, it's moved more towards, and it's actually safer to use, cards and things that'll protect you. There's so many scams, people stealing things. And so, having a credit buffer in front of you is not a bad thing, because the bank can help protect you, right? And points and benefits. And we'll get into all of that, because there's points and benefits from using things and paying them off. But I think what we've developed a cadence for, which we're much better than that, is like, okay, I've run this one up. I need to slow it down, or focus in on this card. We need to pay this off, right? And so there's a strategy. It's a management thing. And so to me, it's like a person that is like, man, you've lost a lot of weight. Well, it's like, no, they didn't just go on a diet and get perfect. It's like they had some days where they ate a cheeseburger or two, and then they had another day that they were really good. And they had another day where they exercised a lot, and they had another day that they didn't exercise so much. But over the period of time, the benefits were there, because they were at least consistent about the goal of living a healthy lifestyle. And so I think what we've improved over the years is that we have pretty good cadence about, okay, if things are starting to run up or look a little weird, it's a little red alert, right?
And where we've gotten a lot better too is we communicate that. So like if we have a big purchase or whatever, you'll say, hey, I'm going to use this card for this payment. For our little cards that we just, when we get our allowances, we just pay those off. But when we know we have a big expense, we communicate that with each other.
And so for folks out there, you're gonna run it over sometimes.
You are. You absolutely are.
You're gonna underestimate sometimes.
You are.
Sometimes you're gonna feel like, man, I can cover this. I know I got some money coming from here, and I got to hustle over here.
Then it don't come.
Somebody going, I know so and so owe me about this, and I could take that, and it doesn't happen. Right. So this is where the trust and transparency has to come in. It's like, look, I put a little on this card. I thought I was going to be able to cover it. It didn't happen. We need to work this into the plan, right? And we should be able to work that together. I've never fussed at you about money. Never. And, never. Not even, you never even heard me raise my voice and get angry. It's just like, okay, let's figure it out, right?
That is true. No, that is true. That is true.
And so it creates an environment where
it's safe.
It's safe.
Yeah,
right?
because that's the other thing too, that you want it. The more you talk about your finances together and what it is that you're doing, it creates this safe environment. I know we had kind of talked about the shared visions and stuff, but the one thing I do want to kind of like tap back in on is, because it's the thing that we're doing too. when we talk about our finances, like I said, why it's so important to let your spouse know. And it's the thing we never want to talk about, because what if something happens to your spouse?
Yeah. Yeah.
And now you don't know what's going on. You don't know what bills need to be paid. You have no idea
Yeah.
of what any of that looks like. So we've gotten to a place where we both know what we've had to have that conversation, because I pay all of the bills. So I had to say, okay, these are my passwords. Here are all the copies of the bills that we have, letting him know where everything is. So if something did happen to me, or even if I just couldn't communicate, for whatever reason, at least now he knows where everything is.
And it's morbid. It's kind of hard to think about, but we don't know how we're going to be affected, right?
And that's accountability too.
That's accountability too. It's like, it could be death. It could be, stroke, right?
Yeah.
It could be something. I can see and hear, but I can't speak, right? Or I can't speak for myself. And, the other person is going to be left to handle those responsibilities, right? And so just imagine, you don't even know how to pay the mortgage, or, and
don't even know who holds our mortgage.
You don't even know who holds the mortgage. You don't even know what account the mortgage money comes out of, right? And so that level of transparency needs to be shared, just for the security of the family's sake, right?
Real.
Just to maintain the family continuity. And even the worst case scenario, if something happens, your spouse needs to be able to know how to put you away. It's like, if they don't know what insurances you have with your job and what they may be entitled to. You may work for a company that may make your spouse absolutely rich if you go away, but they don't know about it, so they don't even know to ask about it, right?
That's true.
And so no, that's the trust and transparency is there both for growth, but it's also there as a hygienic thing. You gotta prepare. We've seen. Oh, go ahead.
No, I'm agreeing with you, because I think we've seen that before, and I think where it's the hardest is for stay-at-home moms.
Yeah.
And so I can, like my mom, like I said, my dad paid everything. Yeah. So I mean, I'm not sure what would have happened if something would have happened to my dad, because she wouldn't have known any of those things, because he didn't communicate those things to her. He just took care of everything. And I'm not saying that was a bad thing, because he did. I mean, he didn't miss a bill. He didn't do any of those things. She just didn't have to worry about it. But there, what happens on the day that you do have to worry about it?
And once again, you don't wish any ill will, but through no fault of their own, they can get hit by a car.
Exactly.
Something could fall on them, or whatever, right? Life happens, and it's just doubly bad when you're in an emotional state about the one you love going through a thing. Yeah. And now you got these pressures on you to take care of all this business,
right? Because the business still has to be,
and you don't even know how to take care of it. Here's the worst case scenario: you don't even know what insurance to tap into to help your spouse out with. Yeah, right? You don't know how to get access to the plan and get things approved and get procedures done and all of those kinds of things. So transparency is required,
especially in that space. But that's so key in financial intimacy, because like I said, sometimes we just look at, well, I just don't want to know how much money I make and whatever. No, there's other things that are involved in financial intimacy that's so vital for you to communicate.
Well, just remember, just let the pride die. There's and once again, there's more benefit to openness than it is to hiding.
Oh yeah.
I know it may feel like it. You may feel like you're exposing yourself, and the other spouse. So this goes to both. Create a safe space to talk about it. If you learn, every time we've reached a situation, it wasn't your problem, or you didn't create an issue. It became an us problem.
Us problem. That's real good. Yes, an us problem.
This is, okay, we got to solve this, right? We got to figure it out. How do we, straighten this out? Or, with all the debt, I didn't have any, just like you didn't have anything to do with all of my criminal activity. Right. I didn't have anything to do with the debt.
Right. That is true.
But I said, hey, this is our debt, right?
Right.
And we're going to pay this off, right?
Yeah.
And so whatever I need, whether it's tapping into my savings or 401k or whatever, we're going to do this, right? And so the more safety we create, the more of an environment we create for that level of transparency,
And to me too, like I said, that's why it's important, even for for couples who are getting together. And like you said, and if you have, like you said, some people are rich. You know, you have to be able to talk about that. Some people own properties,
Yeah.
you know, and the thing about what we don't really understand about real estate is just because couples are married, that's not necessarily marital property.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, so you have to be able to have those discussions about, you know, because some stuff does stay with one spouse.
Yeah. Yeah. Especially if it's not jointly owned
Right,
properly, right?
exactly.
You know, there's
So you want to
yeah.
know that too, because if something happens to that spouse, you want to know, okay, well, now what happens to this?
Yeah.
To this kind of stuff. You know, that's why some people get prenups,
Yeah.
because they have to be able to talk about their money. That's not the moment to hide your money.
And for those of you in blended families, it gets even more complicated,
it's
right?
definitely
Because you have kids from relationships in other places and there's blood entitlements there,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
When a person has children, right? And so what you don't want to do is typical when a funeral happens, right? You know, kids, everybody comes out of woodwork, everybody's mad, everybody's playing claim. So yeah, once again, the hygienic part, not going to get into every specific part about it, but just know that there is a hygienic component to this financial intimacy that must occur, right? That'll give you peace of mind. Two, it'll create a healthy relationship. Two, it goes back to work intimacy when we talked about before. It gives you now a joint work to work on.
It does.
So how do you all feel about this? Tell us what you think about financial intimacy and the communication component of this financial intimacy. How do you think your communication is? You know, what things do you think you need to work on about yourself when it comes to financial intimacy? And we don't even mind if you dig back into the last episode and think about this financial intimacy from the standpoint of your money story.
Yeah.
Right. Because it's really, really funny how quickly we can sort of get together, you know, when we're dating and we're ready to hop into bed, right? And expose even parts that we're ashamed of, right? You know, our bodies. We're willing to give our bodies away, but it's like, you know, ask somebody to look at your checking account. No. You know,
right. And that to me is like the deepest part of intimacy. But like you said, as soon as you start asking folk about their money, everybody
it's like everybody want to clam up, close up. Why you in my business? It's just like, wait a minute, you just didn't have no clothes on a second ago. You know.
And we were both okay with it. You are right about that. That is something to think about. Like I said, if you won't get naked with me in the bedroom, you might as well get naked with me with the finances.
With the finances, all right.
Too, so.
And so on that prophetic note,
we love you guys.
We're going to close it out. Remember, like, share, subscribe to the channel, ring the bell for notifications, ask us questions. What say you? We want to hear from you on this topic, on financial intimacy and the communication component of it. Respond below. Let us know how you feel. And until the next time we get together, we love you. We love you. We love you. And peace.